Most men work their entire lives and yet aren't able to leave much behind in terms of an inheritance. But you can actually create generational wealth, and it's not even that hard. It just requires a strategy that suits you and your family. And in this video, I'm going to cover 3 such ways for you to create generational wealth. But before we begin, I'm Ben Black. I'm a husband, father, business owner, homesteader, but most distinctively I think is I am a dynasty builder. And I've been learning how to turn regular families into dynasties for nearly a decade now. I've left a link in the description down below for you to grab a few free resources. So if building a dynasty is something that you're interested in, be sure to check that out. I always find it prudent to highlight that there's 2 sides to the equation when it comes to generational wealth. There's the wealth side, which we'll be covering in this video, but then there's also the generational side. And building generational wealth is more than just about money. You need to focus on the generations that come after you, hence the term generational wealth. But I'm going to save that for another video. I know you're probably here to learn about the wealth side, so that's what we'll be discussing in this. But if you're interested in the generational side and what it truly takes to build a dynasty, then be sure to subscribe so you don't miss my future videos. Also, I'll just quickly say that I'm not going to be covering the legal structures that you need to set up or the tax structures that you need to set up. That's not an area of expertise for me, and it just varies from country to country. Your best is to consult a professional on that. What I will be covering are universal strategies that will apply no matter where you are in the world. They might not be the most tax efficient in their raw form, but there's doubtless a way that you can structure them in such a way that they do become tax efficient. So just keep that in mind going into the video. But with all that said, let's get into it. First up, we have the family fund. And all patriarchs, to some degree, need to put their resources in the middle for the sake of their families. There's always going to be an imbalance, at first at least, as you build up this treasury, but that's true for all good fathers, no matter how you cut it. If you look at it in the abstract form, it means like foregoing sleep when you go to get your newborn down. We have a newborn on the way, and I'm gotta say I'm looking forward to that. But there's also, the expenses of feeding your kids or spending time with them when you're tired, and just I don't need to make a list. There's countless other things that I'm sure are going to come to mind that we do as dads that typically tend to get a little bit underappreciated until maybe our kids have kids of their own. I could go on, and I'm sure you're aware. But the point is that we give up things as fathers anyway, and we're just looking at this from a financial perspective instead. So in the instance of the family fund, we're just applying the principles that we live by as good fathers anyway, and we're using it to start out a family treasury. All you have to do is take a portion of what you make or have saved or both and set it aside into a fund for the express purpose of the benefit of the family. The idea behind this is to create a pool of resources for your family to draw upon to create more opportunities as your family grows. But just because you're putting this money aside doesn't mean that you can leave it idle. Think of every dollar that you put away as a worker that will go out and produce more money for your family. This means you need to pick a way for the otherwise resting money to go to work for you, and this is going to vary based on what your plans are. Going back to John, he decides to put $5,000 he has saved into a dividend growth portfolio and continues to contribute to it with $100 a week. Within a year, the fund will have grown to almost $11,000 and would generate $400 in dividends. But if he keeps his pace, in 30 years' time, he'll have created an asset worth $1.2 million, generating $50,000 in dividends alone, with or without him. But the funds don't have to stay locked on this path. You may, for example, choose to take a portion of them and buy a side business, or purchase a rental property, or start your family compound as we've done with our family. Perhaps instead of buying their first home, which as we all know is getting increasingly difficult, your kids have the family buy their first house for them, and it stays inside of the family portfolio in which they rent it back from the family. And this has the added benefit of not only giving them a lower cost of living as opposed to them renting or taking out a mortgage, also it means that the income that they make is going back into the family. So they're going out and working and they're renting the house off the family, and then that money is going back into the family treasury. So it is a net benefit to everyone. The family is getting an income, the children are getting a lower cost of living, and you're growing an asset base as well. Now, as your kids start having kids, your family in number are going to grow exponentially, and so these funds aren't something for your children to rest upon and draw from. The principle should never actually be touched, and it should really only ever be used to improve the lives, not the lifestyles, of your family members, which ultimately means creating opportunities. For some families, this means setting up a single family office and making strategic acquisitions. For others, it just means kids chipping in a portion of their income as well. And for others, it can be just when there is an estate within your family, everything in that just goes into the family fund, and from there it buys more assets to create more opportunities for the next generation of the family. So ideally you use this to build an asset base that opens up opportunities for your family, so they can avoid bad debt and decisions, they don't have to rent, and you can keep a net inflow of wealth coming into your family. And an added bonus to that is it can sustain elders while they help in other areas of the family, which ultimately makes things more manageable for the next generation as well. However you decide to build your family fund, it is a surefire way to work towards generational wealth for your family.
You're watching Dynasty Foundry.
You hear the whole you only get 18 summers and you gotta kick them out when they turn 18, but dynastic families don't think like this. This is actually a uniquely Western phenomenon that's been, in my opinion, perpetuated by the media, and it's holding a lot of families back. And you'll find across the world and throughout history that children actually live at home a lot longer than they do in the West, well past 18 in many cases. And this goes for daughters, of course, but it also goes for sons. And in the West, for some reason, by default, we've decided it's a good idea to kick them out, but really, what a strong culture will do is they will allow their children to live at home for a longer amount of time, whether it's until they're married or even when they are married, they'll keep them in the family compound or at least close to home. And in the modern context, what this means is that their extended time at home allows them to accumulate more funds, which in turn allows them to get a better start in life without being pressured into situations that can ultimately hold them back for life. And what's that? I think I can hear the boomers from here. Something about independence and needing to fly the nest? But here's where they're wrong. A child raised well will be able to genuinely contribute. They're not going to be sitting in the basement all day playing Call of Duty. Staying at home gives them a chance to find their calling and pursue greater ambitions, all while stacking cash. And there's probably some boomer out there screaming about going to college or getting a higher profession, but how many 18-year-olds have you ever met that have it all figured out? I know I didn't for sure. I thought I did, but I didn't. Have you ever met an 18-year-old at the right point in life to make a call to get them into debt and lock them down a career path? Or what if they want to start a business or try a few different things out before they lock themselves into that path? When young people, and this goes for women in particular, are forced into making life-defining choices, it can lock them out of the joy of starting a family for over a decade, if not forever in some cases. And we all know the cultural stuff that comes along with college as well. I don't need to say it, but I'm just going to leave that as a thought as well, because when it comes to our daughters, is that really the kind of environment that we want to be subjecting them to? But I'll give the boomers one thing. They do have it right in that there are no free rides. When people aren't working at something and towards a common goal, and they don't have the sense of belonging and the underlying need to contribute and be useful, it will completely undermine their confidence, and probably most importantly, is going to make them lazy. Now, if you want an example of this, just think of any trust fund kid or basement dweller for that matter. It creates this sense of entitlement where it begins the cycle of them squandering away their family wealth and opportunity that's provided to them. So you don't want to create this culture where your kids can do nothing. Instead, the option is to charge them rent. Part of that can go to the bills and subsidizing the cost of living. I'm sure you've been paying for them for a long time now, but there should be a leftover balance as well, and then you can take that and put it into the family treasury. The other added benefit here is that your children staying at home can contribute to chores and other duties. So maybe you have a lot of land to take care of, they can help out with that, or maybe you take turns cooking and things like that. And that frees up your time, allowing you to either work more or build things. And one of those things might be a business that you build together in the evenings. In fact, let me know in the comments down below if you were made to leave home early or if you're thinking about doing that for your kids. And I'll let you know what my plan is for my kids in the comments as well. I just want to give you full disclosure before I close out this section. My dad actually let me live at home as long as I liked. He was really good like that. And we butt heads on occasion, but the fact that I was allowed to live at home allowed me to save a heck of a lot of money and work so much because of that shared workload. And with the work that I did, I actually built the asset base that still benefits my family and my children to this day. And that's how we were able to purchase our homestead without a mortgage. While my dad doesn't share the same mentality as me around Dynasty, I will forever be grateful for what he did for me in terms of letting me live at home longer. And if there's anything you could ever do for your kids financially, it should be this.
You're watching Dynasty Foundry.
Finally, we have becoming an owner. Now, every dynasty takes on an ownership mindset. And we touched on it earlier with creating a family fund. That's creating assets that you own. But as the first patriarch, you need to be putting assets under your family while you also build a dynastic infrastructure. And what kinds of assets that you put into your fund or into whatever it is that you're building is going to depend on your goals and skills. But basically, like going back to the dividend portfolio, anybody can build that or even just buy an ETF and set and forget it. But there are other things that you can do that give you ownership. I think business is the best example of this. You can either have something on the side or you can go all in and create something. You can do something in your spare time just to add a bit of extra revenue. You can even go and buy a fully established business if that's something that you want to do. Like maybe you take some time to build up that stock portfolio of which you also have ownership over, and then eventually you build it up to the point where you can cash out and then buy an established business, and that's how you hit the ground running when your sons are a bit older. But it can even be a side thing. Maybe you have a few vehicles that you rent out, or you clean driveways on the weekend. Or maybe you have like a dozen sighted vending machines, and then you go around and you collect the money off them after work. I've always personally liked the idea of that, frankly. But you know, these are things that your family will own, and they will give you resilience. So if you lose a job, or if you have something that you want to scale, that is always going to be a benefit to you. You really should be instilling this mentality into your kids as well. It might be that you have a side thing that you've built out that you want to expand into a full business, but you just don't have the time or maybe the willingness to do it. But let's go with that vending machine example that I said earlier. Now, 12 machines probably isn't enough to employ you full time, but you might have a teenage son who's interested in this, and he probably has a lot more free time than you do, and less overhead for that matter. So in order to come into the business, he goes around after school and finds you sites for the business. And maybe he winds up getting 50 sites by the end of the year, and now you have enough to employ him full time. And then with him working on it full time after he finishes school, he can now go out and site even more machines, and eventually you can come to the business as well. And the way that you are funding this is from not only your 9 to 5, but also that family fund that you've built up. Maybe you're taking money out of the ETF that you have purchased, and you're using that to buy vending machines, which gives you a much higher return on your investment. The ultimate asset you can own in your family empire is land, and namely the family compound. But I'll get into what a family compound is in another video. But even if it takes your whole life to get a basically headquarters under your family, it's going to make sure that your kids never have to rent and will always have a roof over their heads. Now, this could be a traditional home, or in my opinion, ideally a rural lot that gives you a bit more space to spread out. But what you really want is to own it free and clear. You don't want to have a mortgage, and I'm well aware that there are better returns on investment, and there's a better way to get a higher return on the amount of money that you have. But as a man without a mortgage myself, I can tell you that there is no better return, at least in terms of your primary residence, than the peace of mind that comes with having a mortgage. If you want to try your hand at starting a business, if you want to try your hand at early retirement, no matter what it is that you want to do, it gives you so much more flexibility. You know, your circumstances can change, and suddenly you're not stressed about having to pay this mortgage and having your home ripped out from under you. It just comes with a lot of peace of mind. So even if it takes your whole life to accumulate this, it is something that is well worth doing. When your family become owners and take on the ownership mentality, their attitude toward the wealth that you and later they will accumulate is completely different. When you take our family property, I think this is a good example, we always tell our kids that they own it as well. Like, our family property is our family compound, and it belongs to the family, not just me, not just my wife, even though it might be in our names for now. It's something that belongs to the entire family. And as a result, the children treat it with a lot more reverence than you would expect. You know, they're still young, but they still have this kind of innate understanding that it is theirs, and they are willing to put work into it to improve it, to make it better. It might be helping with the food forest, it might be helping with the water pump that we put in, it might be helping with painting a little bit of the office or something like that. But whatever it is, they're willing to help us out and put time into it, and they have that shared sense of ownership as well. And it's something that I'm just particularly proud of seeing in my kids.
You're watching Dynasty Foundry.
So closing this out, there were 3 ways that you can build generational wealth for your family, at least in a financial sense. Now, generational wealth isn't really necessarily about the number that you see in your bank account or like a balance sheet, or even about living lavishly. Building a dynasty is about creating something that your kids are proud to inherit, and that's about more than money. Now, it's something that culture and the strength of your family, as well as the money that you do build, compounds across generations. If this resonated with you, you can do me a favor and hit the like button down below. Just know that every dynasty started with a man that chose to act. And if you want that man to be you, I'll put a link down in the description for some free resources that you can grab. I'm going to put some other videos up on the screen now that you can watch, so you can learn a few more things. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my future videos, so you can create generational wealth and start your dynasty. And with that said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.